I predicted that ZeniMax, or Bethesda, was going to sell to Microsoft a full year before it actually happened. I've got all of the proof in the description box beneath the like button if you want to check that out yourself. I was able to predict it not because I'm some sort of business savant or genius, but because I just looked at the paperwork, I looked at the financials, put two and two together. All of a sudden, Bethesda and every other studio beneath their umbrella started implementing all sorts of crazy microtransactions and really predatory monetization schemes, all in the pursuit of inflating their revenue, which doesn't just come out of nowhere, especially when the management has stayed the same. So all of a sudden it became very clear, oh, they're trying to look more and more appealing to a potential buyer because all of the management is getting old. They're in their 70s. They want to sell, get out, and go buy a big mega yacht. Can't really blame them for that, but it turns out to be true. That's what they were doing, and they, of course, ended up selling for what was, at the time, a record-setting amount of money. Well, over the last couple of days, there's been some rumors floating about, namely that Ubisoft, the company behind Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, and the like, they are actively entertaining offers from outside funds, corporations, private equity firms, you name it. They'll look at the offer. They're saying that they're not looking to sell, but they will check out the offers if presented. So I figured it would be fun to use my relatively accurate track record of 1-0 to look at the possibility of Ubisoft selling, whether or not Microsoft is the most likely buyer or if it's going to go somewhere else. We're going to check it out. Fair warning, we're going to talk about some like nitty-gritty business financial details. I'm going to try to keep it relatively basic just for sake of ease of consumption. If you guys have any specific questions about this stuff or anything that you see, make sure to leave a comment or tweet me or head over to our Discord. Again, links in the description box below, and I can answer specific questions if I'm able to, or at least I probably can point you in the general direction of where you can find the answer if it's something above even my head. But with that said, let's get into it. So the first thing you're going to notice is that Ubisoft has had a decent couple of days since these rumors started floating about, with their stock jumping 11% over the course of about a day or so once these rumors started floating, specifically because people love the idea of a potential buyout. Because what will happen is that if the stock is trading, say, around 34, 35 bucks a share on April 22nd of 2022 in the morning, if an offer to buy it out comes in at 1 p.m., that offer has to be above whatever that trailing average is, because somebody of course has to offer more than the current price in order to be appealing, especially when you're trying to buy out an entire company with thousands upon thousands of employees and shareholders. So with this, they would have to come in and offer maybe 40 bucks a share, 50 bucks a share, 60 bucks a share in order to buy out the entire firm. So when people say like, oh, well, right now it's trading at 34.60 a share. So clearly if somebody came in, they would have to have 34.60 in euros, that is, and then multiply that by the total shares outstanding, and that'll give you the total price of the company. Well, no, not really. You have to come in and offer more than the share is currently trading at, which is why Twitter, you know, when Elon came in offering like 54.20 per share, that was a premium over what the stock had been trading on average for the last few months up until that point. And that's why that offer was appealing, because he was offering a premium. But you know what? Rumors are rumors. Like anybody can say, oh, well, it's rumored that Ubisoft is potentially going to be bought out by a big firm. It's rumored that somebody is looking at the company as a potential buyout opportunity. That doesn't mean anything at all. So what we have to do is to look at whether or not it even makes sense for the company to be bought out. You know, it's like if people say, oh, well, Apple is about to be bought by Amazon. Like that doesn't make any damn sense at all. That's clearly not going to happen. But with Ubisoft, it actually could make a lot more sense. And what we can do is look at a few different metrics. For one, we can look at the last 3 years of the company's stock. If we look at this, you can see the general trend has actually been dropping pretty significantly. This is a lot to do with the recent performance of some of their major releases like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, the fact that they're slowing down release schedules and giving more time to the developers between each release, which also means that there's less revenue coming in year over year at least. All of that plays into this. If we look at their individual financials, you can see on a trailing basis that it's been a little bit all over the place, which mainly indicates a lack of stability in the leadership, which is borne out if you know anything about Ubisoft's troubles recently with the issues they've had with abuse of employees from upper management, with the corruption and nepotism that's been going on in the upper management of Ubisoft, with Yves Guillemot, the CEO, giving jobs to his friends and family who aren't particularly qualified for that position, but he's still hiring them anyways. Lots of crap like that going on behind the scenes. And you can see that the performance has been a little unsteady. Of course, this is during COVID, but with video game companies specifically, they excelled during COVID, especially 2020, when everybody was in lockdown, specifically because they were locked down. What else are you going to do other than play some video games? They actually had a pretty rough 2020 if you look at the numbers, especially year over year compared to 2019 when everything was hunky-dory. A lot of this has to do with the crap that went down with Ghost Recon Breakpoint, which everybody knows was like the worst game of 2019. It was totally broken, lazy, terrible. It was just awful in every way, shape, and form. And you can see that all of the delays that they announced after that happened, all of the revenue that they lost, the goodwill that they lost from customers, all hit them pretty hard when you look at these trends, because the following year they really took it hard when every other major gaming company was excelling. So this is part of the reason I think Ubisoft looks a lot more appealing as an acquisition target, because they've stumbled for a few years in a row now, which has dropped their stock price significantly, which makes them much more appealing for a buyout. Because if we were looking at this back in, let's say, all the way back here in April of 2019, 83.66 in terms of euros again per share. That's pretty steep. But you compare it to what it is today at 38.43. It was 34 just a few days ago before these rumors leaked. That's much more doable. That's much more appealing. So I think we can establish that Ubisoft is a reasonable target, at least in terms of price. The question is whether or not they could actually bring money back in if they were acquired by somebody, which I think is actually a much more subjective consideration than you might think. But my gut check, and after looking over some of these numbers, it seems like in general the company has been growing, perhaps not in pace with other major companies that are out there in the gaming space, but they've been doing well enough that I think there is certainly potential. And at this discounted price, the company is certainly alluring. And one of the ways you can tell that is when looking at the EBITDA, as we called it in my business school, which is just earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. This basically just tells you what they're earning before they make all of the payments and obligatory things that they have to do as being a major corporation. So this will give you kind of raw numbers on what money is coming in before they have to pay it out to all sorts of different places. And in this case, it actually looks pretty good. They've had 650 back in 2019, I believe this was 766, 743, or maybe 2018 or 2017, Jesus. 2017, 650, 766, 743. It's in pace, not great. 560 in 2020 with the major stumbles that they had after Ghost Recon Breakpoint, and then 948 in 2021 with the success of Valhalla, with the success of some of the other launches that they've had. So I think they're on pace to continue growing and expanding. It's just going to be a matter of the management, how they can keep this up, and potentially being bought out by a big firm that can supervise these things in a more level-headed way that could see more stability brought to this. Now, who exactly is looking at purchasing them and buying them out? Well, there's a couple of names being thrown around. For one, Blackstone. Blackstone currently has a ton of money under their belt. They're effectively just a investment firm. What they do is they go in, they have money from private investors, corporations, insurance companies, life insurance companies. They throw their money into Blackstone, and then Blackstone has a team of analysts, a team of skilled investors who are highly trained and know what they're doing, and then they make investment decisions with that money. In this case, they have it split up: real estate, private equity, hedge funds, credit, and insurance. All of this stuff, they're managing just about $750 billion It's a big firm. I guess I should also clarify, Blackstone had almost $1 trillion under management until just like a month or two ago, when the market started to kind of go poo-poo, when everything started in Russia and the market sort of started slowing down. Point is, this is a huge firm. If anybody could find a way to acquire Ubisoft, it would be this group. But they don't have a history of going after gaming companies specifically because they're really unstable in the eyes of a company like Blackstone, who invests a lot into like real estate and insurance companies. It's not really up their alley, but who knows? Maybe they do look at it. Maybe this is their first step out if the price is appealing enough. But these guys are not sort of gut feeling investors. These are by the book, run the numbers. If the numbers make sense, we go in. If not, we're not interested. And in that respect, I think they're much less likely to take on Ubisoft because there's a lot of risk involved with it, especially because so many of their franchises gamers seem to feel are stagnating, with Assassin's Creed, with The Division, with For Honor, with, I mean, you name it. If Ubisoft is managing the IP, it's probably flattened out and kind of lame. The other one that's been thrown around is KKR, which is Kohlberg, Kravitz, and Roberts, and it's just a big company, same type of thing. They invest a ton of money into private equity projects, buying out companies, reworking them, selling them off again. They do the kind of pump and dump type of thing. And they manage just about $250 billion under their wheelhouse, and they are very, very capable investors. But once again, these guys are professional investors. This is all this company does. And they don't tend to take unnecessary risks, and they haven't expressed a lot of interest in the gaming industry before, so it's unlikely that they would tackle something like Ubisoft out of nowhere. So while I think it's very likely that these companies are investigating Ubisoft for a potential buyout, after all, if any company is set at a good price, companies like these will snatch them up. Why the hell not? You know, it just makes sense. But I don't think it's very likely that one of these companies goes through with it and actually takes them on. As for other possible buyers, you know, people have thrown out Xbox, people have thrown out Sony, people have thrown out even Nintendo, I saw some people saying on Twitter. Those are all much less likely, I think, because Xbox, for one, is already dealing with major regulatory hurdles in their acquisition of Activision. If they came out at any time in the next year or two and said that they wanted to buy Ubisoft as well, that would almost certainly be shut down, because people could point at it and be like, look, in the last few years, they've spent more money than like Sony's total net worth or Sony's market cap on acquisitions in their gaming division. Like, this is pretty predatory and monopolistic. We don't like this. And I think it's very likely that the regulators would shut that acquisition down, because already the Activision acquisition is in question. So I don't think Microsoft is going to go after that. I just don't think that they would even announce it. Even if they were really interested in buying Ubisoft, I think they would hold off and wait a few years, if not 5 to 10 years, before trying it. Secondly, PlayStation and Sony. I don't think that Sony has the funding lined up to do something like this. Yeah, they probably could finance it in creative ways. Sony is a ridiculously well-managed company. Their finances are extremely sturdy. They have reasonable revenue that comes in very predictably. They very rarely miss targets, and they have very low debt, which means that they could take on a lot of debt to acquire something like Ubisoft. But I don't think they're going to do it. And one of the main reasons I don't think they're going to do it is because the whole portfolio that Ubisoft has to offer PlayStation is almost entirely in opposition to Sony's general design philosophy. There's a reason PlayStation games have been so successful in the last decade, and it's because they are almost the polar opposite of Ubisoft titles. So I don't see it as a reasonable acquisition for them, especially because it would be a ridiculously heavy burden to put on Sony as a corporation to get this acquisition funded and working. And I don't think that the payoff is there. Not to mention, I don't think it's in line with their general philosophy for what they're going for in their portfolio. So I don't think it's likely that they pick them up. As for Nintendo, they don't have the money, so just don't even worry about it. The other question is somebody like Tencent or a major company coming in out of Asia, buying them up and reworking it. I hope that doesn't happen, because if you think that these games are heavily monetized now, just wait. It would be unbelievable. I mean, that would almost instantly be the death of all of these franchises. It would be very, very tragic if that happened. So they could afford it. Somebody like Tencent could certainly come in and do this. I don't know if they are going to. I don't know if Ubisoft management would let that happen. I really don't know. That's a big question mark. But I'd say if anybody was going to buy Ubisoft, the most likely group would be somebody like Tencent or a private equity firm that already has video game management in its portfolio. There's not many like that, especially not many like that have enough money to buy Ubisoft, but it's possible. I mean, all told, I think it's likely that Ubisoft is setting itself up for sale. I think they've been extremely predatory for the last few years, and they've been trying to push themselves in this direction, and I think it only makes sense. I mean, Yves Guillemot and the other family members that are managing Ubisoft have dealt with a lot of pressure from outside forces to step down, to retire, to move the company on to other things, and to basically get out of the way. And they haven't done that to this point. And you got to ask why. Like, Yves Guillemot is a billionaire. Why wouldn't he just step down, go retire, live in the Bahamas? Like, why is he still at the helm? And in my mind, there's two options. Either he really just loves the job and doesn't want to step down because it's his life, his legacy, it's all he knows how to do, and it's all he wants to do. Or he's going to try to see this through. He's worked on this for decades at this point, and he wants to set Ubisoft up to sell, and he'll leave and ride off into the sunset with billions upon billions of dollars, very, very happy and satisfied with what he's done. I think that latter option is much more likely, but I think the problem is that as of right now, Ubisoft is the least appealing target for acquisitions out of a sea of possible acquisitions. And so what I would personally expect to happen is that we don't hear anything about this for the next few years. And then probably later in this console generation, we will see some offers coming in and bids coming in that are pretty appealing. But by that point, hopefully Ubisoft will have figured their crap out. And with the release of something like, the Avatar game and Assassin's Creed Infinity and those other titles, hopefully they'll be back in their stride and they'll be like, we don't need to sell, we're doing great, but we're just gonna have to wait and see. But let me know what you think of all of this. If you have any thoughts or predictions as to whether or not Ubisoft is gonna get bought out or if they're even interested in it. I think it's possible. I think they'll entertain offers, but I don't think anybody's gonna come in with something that Ubisoft can't ignore. And I certainly think that Microsoft is not gonna be the one that comes in and makes a big offer, because they'd much rather acquire Activision than Ubisoft. They don't want to give up the Activision deal to get Ubisoft. So they're going to keep it calm and cool and collected. They're going to kill this whale over here, and then maybe they'll look at Ubisoft after the fact. I don't think it would go through. I think they'd probably make an offer and it would probably get accepted, but I don't think it would actually be allowed to go through with regulators. But we're just gonna have to wait and see. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Subscribe if you liked the video, hit the like button so I know to make more of these business style videos. It helps me navigate all of those considerations when working on these videos on the back end. And if you have a couple of extra minutes, pop over to the Twitch stream. We're probably live right now as this video goes up. So if you want to say hi, come by and say hi. Love to see you. But that's it for me. Thank you so much for watching. I love you. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.